Hi, welcome back to another book talk. I am happy to see you. And I am picking a book today that, well, of course, I recommend, but it's also a book about an individual who is a personal hero of mine. So before I introduce the book, I'm going to tell you who it is about. This is a graphic nonfiction, not quite a biography because it's a portion of the person's life, so more of a narrative about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And of course, most people call her RBG now, but when I first became aware of her when I was in high school, that acronym had not been applied to her. One of the reasons I was very attracted to her as a hero, as someone to look up to, is there were two lessons my mother really tried to instill in me. And one of them is, Rachel, you need to choose your battles. Because for me, everything was a battle. Anytime someone argued with me or had a different point of view, it instantly was a battle I had to win. And it was annoying, to say the least. And one of the things that I really grew to admire when I first learned about her, really in US government and American government, was the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as an attorney, who presented in front of the Supreme Court looking for gender equality using the 14th Amendment, learned to pick her battles wisely. And as a woman, during a time when many women were not attorneys, just because of how our system was set up, she was also facing many times discrimination. And she had to pick her battles when people were coming to her for civil rights issues to represent different cases. She had to turn down cases which she knew were rightful cases that needed to be represented because she had an ultimate end goal, which was to help both genders receive equal rights, equal benefits, equal representation. And so she was carefully choosing battles that could get to that end goal. So even if the battle was a good one that needed and deserved to be defended, she was turning it down in favor of others. And as somebody who I have come to know through reading and through documentaries, as a woman with an individual with a strong moral compass and who cared deeply about this issue, that couldn't have been easy. And so I still learn and grow about picking my battles. So those of you who know me know it's difficult for me not to make everything an argument. But there is something wise in learning that not everything needs to be a battle. You have to choose what it is you want to fight for and then pick the battles that will achieve that goal. So without further ado, I want to introduce the book. And this book is about how she becomes RBG, okay? How she becomes a Supreme Court justice. And it still holds up, although she passed away last year, it still holds up and is a fantastic read. It's targeted for middle schoolers on up, but I do believe the content and everything else is just fine for upper elementary, provided that they are interested in the topic. So without further ado, here we go. Becoming RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Journey to Justice. And it is written by Debbie Levy and is illustrated by Whitney Gardner. And as we've talked before, sometimes it takes a team to make a work of art like this, where you're using both visual literacy and reading literacy, okay? And that is the case for this. Now, I love this beautiful cover, which shows, let's just pause and look at this, Ruth Bader Ginsburg through the ages. So here we have her as a young girl, as a woman in law school, as a practicing attorney, as a justice, and then, of course, as a Supreme Court justice. And we get to see her in all these different roles. And so this, just so you know, is about her becoming the Supreme Court justice. It does not discuss her life beyond that point. And it works really well. I also do want to acknowledge as a wonderful piece of nonfiction, it does give in the back matter a selected bibliography, which I love. So if you're interested, you can explore more. It also gives sources. So there are source notes so that you can see where the information is coming from. So yeah, as a geeky librarian, I appreciate that. So let's talk about the art before I dig into the content, okay? So take a look at the art. Here she is with Marty, her husband. Anybody who knows anything about Ruth knows that this is a partnership, a marriage that was so incredibly supportive. And he was also an attorney. And when she was up for Supreme Court Justice, he was like, I'm going to drop everything. We're going to move. We'll do whatever it takes to help support you in your journey. This is what a real partnership is. I'm sorry. I just got to say it. Got to say it. Somebody who loves you and sees you completely and supports you in your professional goals. So anyways, as you can tell, this is going to be one of those tonal graphic novels as far as color. And the design is really clean, which I appreciate. You can see that when it comes to the gutters and the panels, so like over here on this side, that often you have captions that will bleed over. And oftentimes what that means with the speech bubbles is that it's going to be carrying on to the next panel. So whatever was happening within that panel, the action is still maybe carried over into the character and what is happening within the next scene. There are some pops of color. Let me show you. And it's like this very hot pink, which really captures the eye. And so when you see that, like especially a page like this, which I love, and here's Marty just holding her. When you get like a full page splash like this, and in this you have like some bleeds too, you really want to draw your eye to that because it's going to show you some wonderful attention to detail. And so that is used throughout. Okay, some of the color, and it's really used to accentuate detail. So this is how it looks. The text, as you can see, is very clear, very easy to read. It draws the eye. And of course, we have our narrative, okay, our text box here, which is helping the reader guide you through. So this is very beautifully illustrated. And I also appreciate the choice of doing sort of this the color choice of the palette, which lends sort of an old-fashioned feel to this because we are kind of going back in time. And then the hints of color and the pop to draw your attention. So first, I'd like to go ahead and start off with the very beginning. But just look at that. I love this. She's well known for her collar right over here. And she had different collars for different occasions. And it's well known for those, even though it's not in the story, that she could barely see, you barely see her above the bench, sort of a thing. But here we start off with each chapter, and there are chapters in it, so it's a great chapter book with her growing up. And one of the things I love, too, that I was drawn to her about is that she was so close to her mother. For those of you who do not know, she is Jewish, and it does show some of the struggles that she undergoes because of her culture and her faith. The incredible support with her mother, even like things like this. This doesn't happen anymore in today's day and age, but back here it does. The fact that she's left-handed. And they're forcing her to learn how to write with her right hand. And this was something my grandfather also went through. And so you can even ask people maybe, for those of you who are younger in your family who are left-handed, and forced to have to write with their right hand. This is something that she also struggled with. And so what I appreciate is that her becoming Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just like us becoming, like me becoming Rachel Zufa, it's all a series of small details in your environment that lead to who you become. And this book beautifully sets up from her childhood onwards who she is. And a lot of that is formulated from her as a child. Okay, so you see here on the cover. And I feel this is very relatable. As another person, as somebody else who obviously we all have our own childhoods, but understanding that somebody who becomes like something like RBG, right, who gets this mythic sort of nickname, can start off with very humble roots. It starts off with the point, for example, that they have family, right? So here we are. I'm sure you recognize this blazing red and what that means, right? That she has family that is in another place, right? Where there is oppression. And also, we know an extermination, a genocide occurring. But what we may not know, okay, is that over here in this country, right, things were also happening against people who are Jewish, and they're waiting here in their home in New York and listening to all of this. It's a difficult thing when you hear about stuff that's happening within your family, the rights that are being trampled, and to the point where people are being killed. And so, how does that formulate? How does that shape the person that Ruth is as a child, when she knows that these are things that are happening to those that are in her family? You also have to understand that just like many other individuals during this time period, women were not seen as necessarily needing an education. And by that I mean further education beyond high school. I can tell you that my own grandmother, one of my grandmothers, an 8th grade graduation was seen as just fine. You don't need to go further. And so she was always so astonished by the fact that my sister and I went and had master's degrees. Like, she was amazed by that and thrilled and proud, but it was something that was beyond her understanding. Ruth and her family is very much, and you'll see, encouraged, okay, encouraged to be what she wanted with her goals. And she had high goals for herself, and she was gifted. And what I mean by that is, not only did she want to learn, she had a gift for it. And so you follow her on this journey, and you also see the hardships that she comes up against because she's a woman. And women are not expected, like I just said, the culture at the time where my grandmother, one of my grandmothers grew up, is 8th grade graduation, you're done. If you go on to college, like she does, to be an attorney, your goal there is, well, you're just really here to go and look for a man, right? And so you also discover that she finds, okay, when she goes off, she finds a man, but she finds somebody who loves her not just because of how she looks, but because of who she is for her mind. Follow Ruth's journey. If you've heard of RBG and you just catch on because, oh, wow, she sounds cool, look deeper into who she is, because she also is an individual who fights for the rights of others, because she has experienced herself discrimination because of who she is. And the other thing, like I said, as a young individual, when I was in high school, I felt everything was a battle. It's still hard as an adult, and I'm going to be turning 45 this week, which is why I wanted to focus on a book I read that featured somebody I greatly admire, and I hope to emulate more. I needed to fight everything. If somebody disagreed with me on something that hit close to home, I was off. I was like Don Quixote, like tilting at windmills. And if you don't know that reference, you can look it up. But I felt like everything needed to be saved, that everything needed to have a champion. And sometimes you need to refocus your life and decide, what is it I'm truly going to fight for? And that was one thing that Ruth Bader Ginsburg inspired in me. And as I learned more about her, and in this book you learn from her as a young age, the things that she's passionate about, and they are many. But you also learn that she realized she needed to have a clear focus in order to really help people. And I hope that's something that as you read and discover about her in this book, which is beautifully done, and it does discuss some of the cases that she focuses on and she chooses. And it's difficult to make those choices of what you're going to fight for, that she was successful because of it. Another justice on the Supreme Court that she clearly reminds me of is Thurgood Marshall, who is another beautiful individual, but he also had to make the same calls. And so people like this give me hope. So I do hope that if you don't know RBG, Becoming RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Journey to Justice by Debbie Levy and Whitney Gardner is a wonderful place to start. For she is a human being above all, and not just some mythic RBG. And that she started somewhere just like you and me. So until next time, happy reading. Discover more about real life people who maybe emulate your mother's advice and make a practical stance for it. And I wish you good health, and I wish you happy reading.